The lights inside the theater were dim, but the air was loud with chatter, clapping, and restless excitement. People had already seen singers, magicians, comedians, and dancers that day, yet something about this next act felt different. A group of performers quietly walked onto the stage, dressed in black from head to toe. Their outfits looked simple, almost plain, and at first glance, no one could guess what was about to happen. The judges leaned forward slightly, especially Simon Cowell, who crossed his arms and stared at the group with curiosity rather than excitement. He had seen thousands of dance crews over the years, many impressive, many forgettable. This one would have to do something extraordinary to stand out. The announcer called out their name, Lightwire, a Filipino LED dance crew competing on America's Got Talent 2025. The crowd applauded politely, but there was no roar, no standing ovation yet. Just curiosity. The leader of the group stepped forward and spoke calmly, explaining that they had traveled from the Philippines with one dream, to show the world something new, something created from years of struggle, teamwork, and belief. His voice trembled slightly, not from fear, but from emotion. Behind him, the other members stood still, heads slightly bowed, as if saving all their energy for what was coming. Simon leaned back and asked the question he often asked dancers. Why should America care? Why should this be different from the hundreds of dance crews that had already stood on that same stage? The leader took a breath and replied that they weren't just dancers, they were storytellers using light. He said they wanted to show a story of hope, of darkness turning into light, something they themselves had lived through. For a brief moment, Simon raised an eyebrow. He had heard similar words before. Still, he nodded, signaling them to begin. The stage went completely dark. Not dim, not shadowy, completely black. For a second, there was silence. Then, suddenly, a single thin line of white light appeared in the center of the stage, floating in the air like magic. The audience gasped softly. Another line appeared, then another, slowly forming shapes that didn't seem attached to any human body. The music began, a low, emotional hum that felt more like a heartbeat than a song. As the beat grew stronger, the lights started moving faster, revealing that the dancers were controlling the glowing wires attached to their suits with perfect precision. What followed was unlike anything the judges or audience had ever seen. The lights didn't just move with the music, they told a story. Lines turned into shapes, shapes turned into figures. A glowing outline of a human appeared, then split into multiple forms, dancing in perfect synchronization. The crew moved so smoothly that the lights seemed alive, as if they were painting pictures in the air. At one moment, the lights formed a heart that broke apart. At another, they created wings spreading wide across the stage. The audience was silent, not because they were bored, but because they were stunned. People leaned forward in their seats, afraid to blink. Simon's arms slowly uncrossed. His posture changed. He was no longer judging, he was watching. The music shifted. The lights turned red, then blue, then white again. The story became darker. The glowing figures appeared to fall, collapse, and fade. One by one, lights went out, leaving only a single glowing line moving weakly across the stage. It felt like watching someone struggle in the dark. You could sense pain, loss, and exhaustion without a single word being spoken. Then, something incredible happened. The faint line suddenly exploded into color. Gold, blue, purple, and white lights burst across the stage. The fallen figures rose again, stronger, brighter. The dancers moved faster now, sharper, more powerful. The music reached its peak, and the lights formed massive shapes that filled the entire stage, stretching wider than anyone thought possible. At one point, the lights spelled out a simple message without using letters, just shapes in motion. Hope. By the time the final beat hit, the lights shot upward like fireworks, then vanished instantly, leaving the stage in complete darkness once again. For half a second, there was silence. Then the entire theater erupted. The crowd jumped to their feet, screaming, clapping, shouting. People were crying. Some covered their mouths in disbelief. Howie Mandel was standing, laughing in shock. Sofia Vergara had tears in her eyes, repeating "Oh my God" over and over. Heidi Klum clapped so hard her hands turned red. Simon Cowell remained seated for a moment longer than the others. His face was serious. The audience began chanting, golden buzzer," over and over again. The lights came back on, revealing the dancers breathing heavily, hands shaking, eyes wide. They had given everything they had. Simon finally stood up. The crowd grew even louder. He walked slowly toward the desk, looking at the crew. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but powerful. He said that he had seen dance crews from all over the world. He said most acts rely on tricks, on flash, on copying what has already been done. Then he paused and said that what they had just done was not copying anyone. It was original. It was emotional. It was art. The crew members began to cry. Simon continued, saying that he didn't just feel entertained, he felt something deeper. He said the performance reminded him why this show exists, to give people a chance to be seen, to be heard, to be felt. Then he looked at the audience, then back at the crew, and said that moments like this don't come often. Without any dramatic countdown, Simon turned and slammed the golden buzzer. Golden confetti exploded from above, raining down on the stage like a dream. The theater shook with cheers so loud it felt like the walls might crack. The crew collapsed to their knees, hugging each other, crying uncontrollably. Some covered their faces, unable to believe what had just happened. Years of struggle, rejection, practice in small rooms with broken lights and limited resources, all led to this moment. As the golden confetti continued to fall, the leader of the group looked up, tears streaming down his face, whispering thank you over and over again. The audience kept cheering, and even Simon smiled, a rare, genuine smile. But the story didn't end there. Backstage, the crew struggled to process what had happened. Cameras followed them as they hugged their families, who had traveled from the Philippines to support them. Their parents cried, their siblings screamed with joy. One of the dancers said that there were nights when they couldn't afford proper equipment, nights when they practiced in the dark because electricity was expensive. Another said people told them LED dance was just a gimmick, that it would never be taken seriously. Yet here they were, straight to the live shows. News of their performance spread like wildfire. Clips went viral within hours. Millions of views, comments from around the world poured in, calling it the best performance in AGT history, calling it unforgettable, calling it the future of dance. People who had never watched the show before were suddenly sharing their video, reacting to it, crying while watching it on their phones. When the live shows arrived, the pressure was higher than ever. The golden buzzer meant expectations. People wanted more. Critics waited to see if they could top their audition or if it had been a one-time miracle. The night of their next performance, the crew stood backstage in silence. No talking, no joking, just deep breaths and closed eyes. They knew they had something new, something even bigger, but fear still crept in. What if they failed? What if the magic was gone? The stage lights dimmed once again. This time, the performance started differently. A soft melody played, and a single glowing dot appeared, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. Slowly, more dots appeared, forming the shape of a child. The story this time was personal. It was about dreaming as a child, losing your way, and finding it again. The lights showed a small figure reaching upward, then being pulled down by darker shapes. The dancers moved with heartbreaking precision, making the audience feel every fall, every struggle. Simon leaned forward, hands clasped, eyes locked on the stage. Halfway through, the music stopped. The lights froze. Then, in complete silence, the lights rearranged themselves into something no one expected. A glowing map of the Philippines appeared on the stage, shining proudly. The audience gasped. The crew then transformed the map into waves, storms, and finally into rising light, symbolizing resilience and strength. The final moments were explosive. The lights burst into colors brighter than before, filling the theater with energy. When the last beat hit, the dancers struck their final pose, lights blazing, then fading slowly like a sunset. The reaction was instant. The crowd rose again, louder than before. The judges were on their feet, clapping, cheering, shouting. Sophia wiped tears from her face. Howie shook his head in disbelief. Heidi blew kisses toward the stage. Simon stood up slowly. When he spoke, he said that this was no longer just a competition. He said they were watching future world stars. He said that what they were doing could headline shows, tours, even change how people see dance performances forever. The crew advanced again, moving closer to the finals. Each round, they pushed themselves further. New stories, new emotions, new ways of using light that no one had ever imagined. They weren't just dancing anymore, they were creating moments that people would remember for years. By the time the finals arrived, the entire world was watching. On finale night, the crew delivered their most powerful performance yet, a tribute to dreams, sacrifice, and unity. When the final light faded and the stage went dark, the silence felt heavy, emotional, sacred. Win or lose, they had already made history. When the results were announced, the crew held hands, eyes closed. Regardless of the final outcome, they had proven something far greater than a trophy. They had shown that creativity has no borders, that light can come from the darkest places, and that dreams born in small rooms can shine on the biggest stages in the world. And somewhere in the crowd, Simon Cowell clapped, knowing that slamming that golden buzzer had been one of the easiest and best decisions he had ever made.